Ladies and gentlemen, I'm back from Midgar. I have officially completed my Final Fantasy VII Remake journey, at least for the time being. My playthrough clocked in at about 30 to 35 hours, and I did quite a bit of gameplay. I did a lot, and I wanted to make an extensive, big, fat review of everything that has to do with this game and my experience in Final Fantasy VII Remake. Now, if you guys don't know me, I am a fighting game YouTuber. I play a lot of fighting games, primarily anime, and I love fighting games. But that does not mean that I don't love playing other games other than fighting games. Final Fantasy VII Remake was a game that has been on my radar ever since it was announced, because I did not play the remake, or I'm sorry, I did not play the original back in the day. That is not nostalgic for me. I was more of a Nintendo boy. And the nostalgia game for me is the Kingdom Hearts series, which, lo and behold, Nomura, which is the creator of the Kingdom Hearts series, is the one that's in charge, or at least one of the people in charge of this remake. So I was definitely very, very interested. And ever since the release, I have played the original. I am one of those people that came in a little later, but when I came into it, I loved it. I can see why people love the game series so much. Love it or hate it, the series is, or that specific game is very respectable in its own regard. It's considered to be the most popular Final Fantasy game just because of the time it came out, and of course the innovative things that they incorporated into the Final Fantasy series. Because of it, love it or hate it, you gotta respect the franchise, at least to some extent. So let me give you guys the rundown of how this video is about to go down, because this is gonna be a long one. So if you decide to click off or could keep watching, either or, this section is for you. I'm gonna be going into a little bit of an intro about myself. I'm gonna be going into an intro about my history with Final Fantasy VII, my thoughts on it, and of course I'll be going over the layout of the video as well, because there's quite a bit of things that I'm gonna be sharing today. And I want to make this as raw as I can, because of course I'm gonna be doing some edits, because I tend to ramble and I get off track, and I want to cut out all the different places that I seem to cut out or ramble on about. So I will make this as raw as possible. I don't want to sound like a reviewer. I want to sound like a gamer, a person who has experienced and how this series or this game, the remake, has touched me as a gamer. I want to make this as raw as possible so I can share my experiences with you guys. So my history with Final Fantasy VII is, I never played the original, like I said, when I was a kid, but I did play it as soon as the remake was announced. I got through a little bit, but not all of it. I got through until, I think, Gold Saucer. The Gold Saucer arc was, where I got to. And I have the playthrough up on YouTube, actually, which is actually something that I completely forgot about. So if you guys want to watch that, you guys definitely can. It was like 4 years ago. But anyways, that's my first experience with Final Fantasy VII. Fast forward to about a couple months ago, 1 month ago, I decided to continue Final Fantasy VII and restart the entire thing by playing New Threat. New Threat is a mod that changes a few things, but essentially it's the same game. So I experienced that, and I got farther into the story. I understand a whole lot more. I understand a whole lot more about the series as a whole and what essentially happens, or what's gonna happen. I did not finish it though. I got to the very, very end and I stopped because Remake came out. I didn't have enough time, but I will be coming back to finish it. So needless to say, I'm not a nostalgia baby for Final Fantasy VII, but I am a person that respects the series quite a bit. And I actually really, really like it, especially the characters. So this video is going to be basically the first video of its kind on my channel where I talk about a game extensively. And this is going to be a long one because I'm going to be talking about pretty much everything from my experiences, of course. I have a little bit of notes here. Well, they're not notes, but there's like a guide so I can stay on course. I'm basically going to be talking about everything. I'm going to be talking about the gameplay, everything about the gameplay, everything about the characters, everything about the similarities from the original to the remake, and of course the cons, because I don't think this game is perfect, so there are some issues with it. And then of course the biggest part of the video, the story. I'm going to be talking about the story and the spoilers. So, by the way, speaking of spoilers, this will be entirely spoiler-free up until the story section. Well, even the story section, I'll give a spoiler-free review or a spoiler-free discussion of it. And then after that, that's going to be spoiler heavy. But I will warn you before then. So I'll timestamp everything, including the spoiler stuff. But I will not be spoiling anything other than maybe some gameplay elements. But in terms of story, I will not be spoiling anything. But if you do want to experience this game, if you haven't already, and there's some gameplay stuff that you want to experience yourself without anybody telling you, click off the video, go experience it. I swear to God, it's so good if you just experience it firsthand without anybody telling you. So yes, that is going to be basically an outline of what you're going to be expecting in this video. So with that being said, let's get right into it. Boy, we're doing a lot of talking, so I got a bottle of water here. So let's talk about the similarities from the original to the remake. There is practically almost everything that has to do with Midgar is in this remake. If you guys don't know, the original, the Midgar section, is about 5 to 6 hours. It's not that much. The entirety of Final Fantasy VII is about 40 plus hours, 40, 50 hours, depending on all the side quests that you do. It could be even longer than that. But they were able to create a remake or a game, a 30 plus hour game based on those 5 hours. And they fleshed it out. They added new things, which are very welcomed. But everything from the original is here in the remake and either modernized or done in a different way. But they are here. Those elements are still here. For example, the most infamous ones, like from the original, like Girl Cloud, like saving Aerith, like meeting all the different characters, Avalanche stuff, sector reactor explosions, everything. And then some. They added new things as well, and we'll get into that in the spoiler stuff. But all of the new things are very much welcomed. I enjoy Final Fantasy VII stuff. I love the fact that I was able to see these characters in either a new light or being put in another situation where I did not expect them to be put in. That's something that I love. I'll share with you one of my favorite anime arcs. And it's one of the dumbest ones, but it's one of my favorites. It's if you guys are familiar with Dragon Ball Z, in the Majin Buu arc, the very beginning when Gohan is grown up after he defeated Cell and he goes to school. Putting a Super Saiyan boy, boy, teenager, whatever, who just saved the planet a couple years prior and is the most super Omega OP guy ever. Well, not ever. Up until that point, that's what we thought. And you put him in a high school setting. What happens? And I absolutely love that. I love that about it. Gohan goes to play baseball. Gohan goes on a date. That type of stuff, I freaking love it. Having a different aspect on a character and kind of seeing the other side of their coin, I love that. And I think that's what this remake achieved and did really well on. There was some things about specific characters I didn't know about, and now I do, because they're put in a situation where we didn't see prior. And if they were put in that situation, that information was not relayed properly. And in this remake, it's very much relayed properly. So that is something that I thoroughly enjoyed as a fan of Final Fantasy VII. If you've never played Final Fantasy VII, that's something that you probably will not get. But either way, everything about the original is here in the remake, and then some. And it's all very much welcomed. So I love the new things and the things that they remade. Fantastic. Let's talk about the gameplay. The gameplay is a huge part of this game, and I think it's the part that they have taken the most time to develop, because the gameplay was very well thought out, I think. Now, one of the things from the original that pioneered some RPG elements is the materia system. The materia system is super complex, and it's well, not complex. Yeah, it can be complex. It's simple to pick up at first, but then when you start to get into it a little bit more, pairing it up and putting it in specific armor weapons and specific actual weapons and which material to give to your partners, that starts to play a huge factor in the originals. They did that to some extent here. They definitely simplified it quite a bit, and they added new things as well. And they also took away some things. Either way, I did not get all the materia, so I'm not sure what's in the game and what's not. Either way, I did like the materia system that they implemented here. It's a more simplified version for an action RPG spin-off of Final Fantasy VII, and it was very welcome. I love it. And they also introduced a weapon upgrade system, which was really awesome. That means, you know, you got a plethora of weapons that you get in the original, but in this game there's quite a bit still, but you actually upgrade those weapons as you go through. There's ability points or weapon points, as I like to call them, where you upgrade your weapons and you can use that same weapon and not, you know, let it fall behind, because whenever you switch your weapons, it aesthetically switches as well. So that's pretty cool. It's a great addition. I love the weapon upgrade system. So let's talk about the actual action RPG element of it. Is it better than the turn-based? Well, that depends on your taste. I think for the time being, the original really does have a great combat system with the ATB and of course the turn-based stuff that they implemented. But this is a very welcomed addition and another way to experience Final Fantasy VII. You can of course switch between every character. You can hold up to a maximum of 3, just like the original, and you can play with every single one of them in real time. You can move them, you can shoot with them. I'm sorry, you can press buttons with them. You can do the command menu is back, so you can do items, you can do spells, you can do abilities. Every single one of those things is back, but re-implemented in a very awesome way. I love the combat system in Final Fantasy VII Remake. It's legit one of my favorites. The fact that I can switch from Cloud to Barret and be able to do things with Barret and be able to cure is awesome. And then after that, while he's doing the animation for curing or doing the animation for this, you switch over to Tifa, and Tifa can do her own thing. And of course, there's the ATB system, which is basically the meter that fills up for you to do any actions. Now, there's a few actions that you can do without the ATB system. So, you know, like regular attacks and heavy attacks that they do as well. But if you want to do any abilities, spells, anything like that, then you have to wait for the ATB system to fill up, and you can fill it up by either, you know, having something that will fill it up for you, like a materia that accelerates the progress of the ATB meter being filled up, or of course you can attack the opponent, and that's how you can fill up your ATB meter quickly. And so a whole bunch of those, just the combination of all those things just make it so fun. And that's why I loved playing this game for an extensive period of time, because I never got bored of what I can do with, you know, with the combination of the materia system, the weapon upgrades, the actual real-time gameplay elements with switching between characters. It was all so much fun. And the fact that every single one of the characters play differently. Barret is a long-range shooter, which you can shoot your gun, and you can do some super gun abilities. Tifa's an up close brawler, so you can of course start pounding on things and rack up some damage. Cloud can be a mixture of both, can be up close, but he can also be a spellcaster. Aerith is a pure spellcaster, utilizing a specific magic attack, and of course, being a support character, she can be a perfect white mage or red mage. I don't know what the official thing for offensive and defensive mage is. I think that's red mage. But either way, God, the actual gameplay is so much fun. Alongside the combat system, there's also just the regular exploration elements of it, or the overworld, where you can go ahead, when you go out of combat phase, you can go into overworld exploration phase, where you can just run around, you have your team behind you, backing you up. There's a Kingdom Hearts element to it that I really like. Of course, there's the side quests. You can go into different towns, complete different tasks, which were actually pretty fun. And alongside that, there is the element of hearing different people talking about current events, which completely immersed me into the story. 100%. Being able to hear what other people think of what's going on was something that I did not expect myself to like so much. Like, I loved it. I love the fact that I can hear different people having their own opinions, and me being able to, either criticize them or be like, oh my God, things that we do actually affect people around us. There's an element to that I really enjoyed. Besides that, exploration and switching between combat phase and exploration phase was really smooth. Being able to open up different chests and stuff. Now, of course, there's some parts of the story that are very linear, and you can just go this way and this way only, and the game will prevent you from going any other way. But other than that, when you get to the sections where the game will let you explore, it's really fun to do. It's just, I love controlling Cloud and just going around and seeing what the hell I can find and what the hell other secrets and different homages I can find and such, I mentioned this briefly, but the side quests were actually really fun to do. That's something that I'm glad that I made myself do, because when I started to take up different side quests, I actually had a lot of fun because I was able to incorporate that enjoyment of the overworld into the side quests. And most of the side quests were actually really fun, being able to go into different places where the story puts you in that different that place, but then going into a side quest where you have to go back to that place and now you can explore even more of that place was an aspect of the side quest that I really enjoyed. Some of them are fetch quests, of course, which but like I said, I really enjoyed seeing these characters in a different way, like Cloud helping out children, like Cloud picking out flowers or something like that. It's something that I kind of enjoyed. Not a lot of people will, but I did quite a bit. So the side quests were actually very fun to do. I can dedicate an entire session of just doing side quests, and they're not as tedious as I thought they would be. Now, to kind of piggyback off of the side quests and of course the overworld, I love the fact that some of these side quests actually might change what happens in the story, which is something that I was not expecting, because the fact that I finished a whole bunch of different side quests and gained notoriety in specific towns for doing tasks for different people, I think changed some things in dialogue and what people thought of me and what people actually did for me, which was something I was not expecting. And with that being the case, there's also things like mini games implemented into the side quests that are so much fun. I absolutely love the fact that I can play a ton of mini games in here, which is something that was really awesome from the original. Like, for example, the infamous squatting mini game was great. They implemented more things into the gyms other than squatting, which was an absolute blast to play. They did, dart mini games. They did just a whole plethora of different things that you can do as side quests to make to either add more context to specific situations or to just get new things and get new abilities, maybe get new items and such that you normally wouldn't get. That's in, like the Colosseum, and there's so many different things in the gameplay that I absolutely enjoyed and definitely made this whole entire thing worth it. Like the package as a whole, you get so much gameplay out of this, which was awesome to me. It was awesome. So next, let's talk about the characters. And I already briefly mentioned the characters, seeing how these characters are put in different situations, and that kind of fleshes them out a little bit more and tells you a little bit more about them. But let's go ahead and continue on with individual characters and why I like them so much and why I think this remake really did them justice. Let's talk about Cloud first. Cloud is a character that in the beginning, or in the original, was a character that was just a very bland, hard ass, basically, until of course you got later into the game, and you know why if you know what I'm talking about. But either way, it was a character that you couldn't really relate as much as I thought you could when I played the original. But then I played the remake, and man, that whole perspective, another perspective of Cloud kind of opened up. Of course, I think that's mostly to do because it's a remake and more information gets relayed as to who the character is and what his feelings actually are, and seeing that he's not just a hard ass and he's just a pretty cool guy, which I really enjoyed. Everything about this game's characters felt so real, and that includes Cloud. That's all I really want to say about it. I'll let you guys experience it more as you get closer to playing the game. So next, let's talk about Tifa. And Tifa is a character I did not expect them, like same thing with Cloud. Didn't expect for me to like the character more in the remake than I already did in the original. But the remake really expanded on all these characters, man. There's something about Tifa in the remake that makes her feel so real and so grounded. And there's a sort of realism to all these characters, really. I mentioned it with Cloud, mentioned it with Tifa. That goes with all of them. Just universal blanket on all these characters, on them being so real. And felt like I'm actually there, and I know somebody that's like that. Tifa is 100% one of those examples. She's a character that, of course, has met or reunites with Cloud after so many years, and is genuinely worried about it because he's been missing for this long, and she is really somebody that I absolutely was rooting for the entire way through, and I wanted to see more of her, and she definitely justifies as one of the main heroines. She is such a sick character. I love it. I love her downs, her ups. I'm sorry, other way around. Her ups, her downs, the way she copes with things, the way that she reacts to things, and the way that she resolves things. Absolutely loved it. Love Tifa. Bert, oh man, my boy Bert. Once again, the remake did a fantastic job depicting who Bert actually is, what he stands for, and just the fact that he's such a cool guy. He's such a cool guy that wants to save the planet, but also wants to be a good dad, wants to be a good friend, and wants to keep everyone safe. I fight for my friends type of guy, who's not afraid to speak his mind, but also be pretty comedic in a way. So I love Barrett. Barrett is by far one of my favorite characters of all time, starting with this remake. In the original, he was one of my favorite characters regardless, but the fact that they fleshed him out even more, and the fact that everything I loved about him in the original, they kept in the remake and then some. Oh my god, I love Bert. Love that guy. So let's talk about a new element about the characters that we really didn't see too much in the original, but we see a lot of in the remake. Jesse, Wedge, and Biggs, part of Avalanche. These three were something that I knew from the beginning we were going to get more of, because everything was going to be taken to Midgar, and Avalanche was going to be a big part of the story. All these three people are real people. I don't care what anybody says. Biggs is a character that's more father-like and more worries about his friends and worries about the bad outcomes that are going to happen while doing these dangerous missions. Jessie, a very outspoken woman who definitely does not let anybody give her no for an answer, and can figure out different ways to be able to achieve her goals. She's very smart and very thirsty for the Cloud. But there's a new aspect to Jessie that I did not expect them to give to her. She was such a fantastic character for me to see on screen. A lot of people absolutely love Jessie, and I do too. She's so great. Wedge, my new favorite character in Final Fantasy VII. That guy is basically my best friend. I'm not saying that my best friend is like him. No, Wedge himself, I self-proclaimed best friend. I freaking love Wedge with a burning passion. Something about him that I just cannot get over, and the fact that they gave him so much personality. All these characters so much personality, but Wedge in particular is best boy. Best boy. I love every single one of these characters, Wedge included, Jessie included, Biggs included. They were able to flesh them out in a way that they have forever been solidified as one of my favorite characters in a freaking RPG. Love these characters. So many good moments. And the dialogue between all these characters. Oh, God. Just thinking about it makes me want to play the game again. It's some of the best dialogue I've seen in a long time. Media, period. In movies, in games, in books, anywhere. And they were portrayed, voice actor wise, in such a way that would make them feel as real as possible. I cannot express that enough. All these characters feel so freaking real. Now, with those out of the way, let's talk about the characters that were also in the original, but they were fleshed out more in the remake, like the villains, such as Head Iger. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. I don't know if I am, but basically the public administrator, the safety administrator guy, the one that controls the army pretty much, or the security. That guy, Head Iger. I call him Head Iger. He was really cool. He was a great villain who was intimidating, where we knew he was a freaking a villain, but definitely solidified as one of the most intimidating villains in RPGs, mostly because of how he was depicted and how the information was relayed. President Shinra, of course, at first I thought he was just a sleazy cuck. He was just sitting on his throne, just doing nothing. But this remake really depicted President Shinra a lot more like Machiavellian and a lot more maniacal, and also just a lot more evil. He was very sinister. That's a good way to put it. Much more sinister than the original. That I really enjoyed that aspect of it. Other characters like Hojo. Hojo was depicted fantastically in the remake, and he was awesome. Freaking Reeve and Palmer, all those characters, Scarlet even, all those characters were depicted so well and fleshed out so much more. And we can definitely tell, hey, these are the villains. These are definitely the villains. And I also can't forget about the new characters. I can't forget about the new additions, such as Marl, such as Leslie, Weimer, that freaking Materia boy that always follows you around everywhere, Kyrie, those characters, Johnny, freaking, how could I forget about Johnny? Those characters were just great. All of them were fantastic additions. And they were depicted so well. I loved every second of them, and I wanted to see more of them. Of course, excuse me, hiccups. Had lunch a little earlier today, so yeah, all these new characters were so great. I won't go into any more detail than that, but because you have to experience the game yourself if you guys really want to. But either way, all the characters in this remake were just all awesome. Let's talk about the things that I didn't necessarily like or I found to be problems in FF7 Remake. The number one, I'll just say it outright, an issue that a lot of people had with this game too was the padding. And you can definitely tell. Now, here's the thing. The padding, I didn't mind a ton because I was enjoying my experience. But you can definitely tell and you can feel where there's padding and where there's not. The padding itself wasn't exactly terrible because it was accompanied with good gameplay. However, you can definitely tell. You can tell that some sections were drawn out a little longer than they needed to be. I'll give you one right off the bat. The first one that I felt was the Sector 5 reactor, and of course the Airbuster boss fight. And now that's all I'll say. The actual boss fight wasn't the actual problem. It was the lead up to the boss fights. So the Airbuster lead up and the Sector 5 reactor, getting to the Sector 5 reactor, were just straight up super padded. Now there's other sections as well that I feel like were very much padded. But I will say that there's some sections that were definitely didn't need to be there, but they were trying to make a specific game with a specific runtime, and they wanted to just add more gameplay elements, I guess. And I don't necessarily mind it because, like I said, gameplay is good, but I would have liked it if some sections were a little bit shorter because they drawn out too long and you just want to progress the story. Things are freaking happening and all of a sudden you have to go through a bunch of different rooms and fetch quests and do all this crap before you actually move on with the story. So that's one thing that a lot of people are complaining about as well and that they don't like as much, and I tend to agree with that. Besides the padding and besides the places where it was a little too long, overstayed their welcome, there was also some specific bug glitches, which is very minuscule. Like, I gotta say that this is part of this con section. This bugs and things is like 5% of this because the game did soft lock on me, and thank the Lord that this game has autosave because I soft locked in the middle of the stream, in the middle of the gameplay, and I couldn't do anything. All I had to do was pray that I saved, and I didn't save. It was like 4 hours without saving because I was so immersed. I know that was stupid of me. I know. But I was so immersed that I forgot to save, even though it's so easy to save in this game, and I soft locked, and my worst nightmare came true. The fact that I would have to redo like 2 to 3 hours worth of gameplay, which included grinding, which included exploration, all that stuff gone out the window. And thank God that it only set me back like for 5 minutes. It was so bad. when it's soft locked. And either way, there are some issues like graphically wise, and the textures weren't all that great either. There were some bugs like and glitches where the textures wouldn't load in time, and the things just wouldn't load at all, and so it would stay in like the really bad texture model, but then like 2 minutes later it would kick in. So, and I think that's more hardware limitation than anything else. I'm waiting for the PC version to come out so I can play this game again. Yes, you heard me right. I'm gonna play this game again in the PC version so I can see all the upgraded 4K extremely detailed details, textures, and of course maybe some mods to make it look even better than it should be. So yeah, the bugs and the graphical glitches are a little bit of a problem. The soft locking was definitely an issue, but that's of course depending on every playthrough, so it didn't affect me too much, thank God. But that's something that I do have to address, even though it's very minuscule. And the last but not least, I think the fact that this game does not have hard mode right off the bat is something that I don't think is a good idea, because the game can be pretty freaking easy. And a lot of people really like the hard difficulty, even though myself, I don't necessarily like playing hard mode on my first try. Sometimes if I hear a game's too easy, I'll just go straight hard mode, because you get hard mode when you complete the series or you complete the game, and some people just don't pick up for a second playthrough. Even me, I'd like to go through the game itself in hard mode when the PC version comes out, but I'm gonna have to play it on PS4 again because I unlocked it, which is unfortunate. I really wish that they would just straight up give you hard mode. Like, come on now, what's the hold up here? Either way, that's a very minuscule one too, but nonetheless, I enjoy the game so much that this section, the cons, and doesn't affect me that much. The padding I don't care about. The graphical glitches I can get by. In hard mode, whatever, you know? I love this game a lot. Here we are in the story section. This is the part where things get kind of crazy. So, first and foremost, I'm going to start off with a spoiler-free review of it and my thoughts on the story, spoiler-free. And then after that, I'll issue a spoiler warning. We're going to go into great detail. I have a lot to talk about. And so let's get started with the spoiler-free one. Story's great. I was a big fan of the FF7 story. I didn't find I mean, it's not the greatest, but it's still really nice, and I immersed myself in it. I love the characters. I mostly love the characters. That's what I love, and that's primarily what gets me to love a game, is the characters. You can have freaking not the greatest story, cliched, whatever, but the characters can be amazing, and I'll still play it. I'll love it. So with that being the case, they basically did the same thing as they did in the original, up to a certain point, and then of course they implemented new things. They fleshed out more things, which I really like. Some of the new additions were very, very, very welcomed. And I think if you have played the original, you'll definitely enjoy the game more. You will get a big kick out of the different changes and the things that were actually remade, like frame to frame, were so great. But when it comes to the story as a new player or a new person experiencing the game, things can get confusing. Especially because they've changed a few things that I won't disclose, but you'll definitely be very, very confused. Starting from early on, because they changed a couple things with Sephiroth, and if you're not there to pick out those changes immediately, you're gonna be like, oh, so that's how it plays out. So, okay, cool. But no, if you played the game, you're like, you're not supposed to be there yet. What are you doing here? So, or they explained it earlier, or they depict it earlier, whatever. So the story itself, I think, was very immersive, and I think that's particularly we gotta thank the people that created the dialogue, and we created the moments where you spend time with characters that weren't originally there, but now you have a new appreciation towards specific situations, specific characters, and sequence of events. Even though I was doing side quests, I wanted to progress the story as much as I can, because I wanted to see how they would do this part, how they would do this part, how they would do this part. Then you get to the end and things get kind of crazy. I will say this right now. The ending is definitely one of the craziest things I've seen in Final Fantasy, especially when it comes to 7. I will tell you right now that if you have not played Final Fantasy 7, the original, you won't get it. You will not get it. And if you played it, I'll tell you this right now. If you played the original Final Fantasy 7, the ending will blow your mind. I'm not lying. So that's all I'm going to say on it. That's all I'm going to say on it. That's pretty much my spoiler-free review of the story. It was enjoyable. I loved the original one, and they fleshed it out in a way where it made it even more enjoyable here. And I really, really liked it. I liked it. That's as much as I can say without going into spoiler territory. Of course, you know, there's other things that if you played it and you haven't played the remake yet, like everything is still back, like, you know, Drag Cloud and the bombing missions, and there's new things like new Avalanche missions and other things as well. How Sephiroth is implemented into this remake, of course, is different, and also very welcome to add a new element to the story of Final Fantasy VII. And it's just, you know, the part where you rescue Aerith from the Turks, that part was great too, and all that stuff is just awesome. Loved it. So anyways, that's about concludes the spoiler-free section. We're entering spoiler territory. So we have officially entered the new territory, the spoiler territory. Oh boy, here we go. So first, just to kind of briefly disclose all the new things that they implemented in here, the new Jesse lines, the new Wedge lines, the new, oh sorry, not lines, scenes, the new Jesse scenes, the new Wedge scenes, the new Big scenes, the new Birch scenes. I love the fact that we get to see, just to kind of finish up on those three, I love the new scenes with Jessie because there's a specific element to her that I absolutely love. I love the fact that she has this new outlook, or this new way of thinking when it comes to the remake. She has this new element where she can look at the silver lining to everything. It's like, yeah, you may be a hard ass, but then you're this. Yes, this might have happened, but then we can do this, or that. You know, she always has some sort of a very like just charming personality to her, where she knows what she's doing. She's very headstrong. She takes responsibility, and she, not only that, but she's also vulnerable. Like the fact that where they blow up Sector 1, I think it is, Sector 1 reactor, and the fact that her explosion really wasn't that big. It was Shinra that made it even bigger, and they deliberately exploded the entire thing. And Jessie just was like, okay, I didn't make it that strong. What the hell is going on? Like, she starts to think about it. She's like, oh my God, what happened? Did I do that? I did it? I did that. But it really wasn't her. But she ponders on this, and she never gets to know the truth behind Sector 1. And that Shinra blew it up 100%. I mean, Jessie blew it up, but it wasn't supposed to completely destroy everything in the reactor, like poof, like a million pieces. That was Shinra, but she like started it, and then Shinra finished it because they were like, oh man, that explosion was weak, let's just finish the job. And don't worry about that whole thing. But anyways, either or, Jessie was such a treat to flesh out. And not just her, but Biggs and Wedge. Wedge is such a cool character because he's such a goofball, and he loves to eat, and he wants to feel like he's important in the team, where, you know, Jessie does the bombs and Biggs, you know, leads the operations and makes sure everyone's safe and is always knows what to do in specific situations. And Wedge is one of those people that wants to do something for these people, but he really can't. It's beyond his limits, and he wants to feel special in that regard. He wants to make a difference. Biggs, like I said, he's a character that knows what to do at all times. Well, not knows what to do at all times, but he knows what needs to be done, and he tries to make it happen as best as he can. I love the aspect of Biggs where you, of course, see him worrying all the time. He always fears the worst, and that's such a real thing to feel as a human being. You always fear for the worst. Like, every time they go on these missions, he fears that something bad's gonna happen, until it finally happens, and man, you can see it on his expression, and you can see it. He makes peace with it at the very end, when he, of course, passes. Which, of course, I will talk about a little later on why that's crazy. But about what happens to Biggs. So anyways, yes, so all of those three elements are great. I love the fact that we revisit Sector 7. I love that. I love the new lab that they implement underneath. They see the experiments that they have been doing on humans and on dogs and stuff underneath Sector 7. That's a new aspect to this that I loved. And, the whole mission that you see offside, when Sector 7 stuff is going down and they're Tifa and Cloud are climbing the pillar or the supporter, you play as a little side mission with Aerith trying to get to Marlene and trying to get her to safety. And you see Marlene at the bar, and Aerith is this kind person that she gets to automatically like. And then all of a sudden the Turks show up and they make a deal saying, hey, Aerith, you're coming with me. And Aerith said, okay, I'm coming with you only if you get Marlene to safety. So that type of stuff I freaking loved, adored. So great. We get to see new views to these characters and new views to what actually happened while that whole event was going down, which is awesome. And yeah, just all those scenes are great. Now, let's go ahead and get into the big one. I'm not going to waste any more time. This is the one that I want to talk about the most. The big one. The fact that this is not a remake. This is a reimagining of Final Fantasy VII. You heard me. Reimagining. Let's talk about the Whispers, or the Plot Ghosts, or the Time Jannies, or the Dementors, whatever you want to call them. I did not know what these things were, and I don't think anybody knew until the very end what the hell these things were. They were not in the original. There's these like Dementor-looking things that always interfere, or they always do something in the story that you don't know whether they're enemies or they're freaking friends. Sometimes they help you, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they completely just mess things up all the time, and you just don't know what these things are. These are brand new, and I was confused the entire time. Then we get to Chapter 18, and that's where things hit the fan. That's where things all start to come together. And, actually, like Chapter 17, they explained what the Whispers or these Plot Ghosts were. Basically saying these are basically regulators of fate. These guys are basically the reason why things happen. This is destiny. Like, that your destiny is to die here. Then that means these ghosts are going to make it happen. Or this section right here, basically, like, for example, if there was like a falling building and you're underneath it and you're not supposed to die at that point, they push you away. Like, they try to regulate the fate, destiny. That's what it is. But then we start to realize that's more meta than what it actually is. That's more meta. It's more mind-blowing than that. These ghosts are basically trying to play out the original 1997 timeline. Like, for example, when Barrett died. When Bert died, that was new. I'm like, what do you mean? He got stabbed by Sephiroth, which is, I'll get into Sephiroth later. That's something that's crazier. When Sephiroth stabbed Bert, and I said, that's not supposed to happen. And then the Plot Ghost came in and they revived him. What? So at that point, I knew this is much more meta than I originally thought it was. So what's gonna happen? Chapter 18 happened. Aerith basically said, hey, listen, she's basically got spoiled the entire game. She knows that Aerith's gonna die. She knows the planet's gonna be sucked dry. She knows this stuff is gonna happen. So she said, listen, if we keep doing the way things we're doing, it's gonna play out not very well. The things are not gonna end super well, which they didn't. And the original FF7 it wasn't super well. Even though they stopped Sephiroth and all that crap. She saw Meteor and she saw all that stuff and the planet's gonna die and blah, blah, blah. So she said, we can change it. We can change it. So, from Chapter 18 forward, they confront the Plot Ghosts. They basically were confronting the original timeline. That's the final boss. The final boss of this game is the original Final Fantasy VII timeline. And when you overcome this boss, everything was completely changed. Somehow, when they defeated these Plot Ghosts, it rippled through time and through alternate realities and these plot ghosts that also apparently interfered with Zack Fair's death. If you don't know who Zack is from Crisis Core, essentially. He died trying to get Cloud over to Midgar so they can both travel. They were trying to travel to Midgar together. Zack got stopped by the Shinra soldiers. He died trying to basically distract him from Cloud. Yada, yada, yada. Long story short, basically Zack died. And he's like the original soldier. He's the guy that Cloud was trying to be. And with the Buster Sword, with the outfit and everything, that's Zack's stuff. And Cloud basically took Zack's memories from him, essentially, because of experimentations and such. Anyways, either or, Zack lived. They changed the timeline where Zack in Crisis Core survived that whole Shinra encounter. He was supposed to die. A very, very touching, very sad moment in Final Fantasy VII. And in this timeline, that's when like a rift happens and a new timeline, a new reality happens. A reality where Zack lives, which is the current one that they're in right now, in the remake. And there's a reality where Zack lives, and both Zack and Cloud made it to Midgar together. So, with that, before I continue on, there's two different things for this. There is, of course, the Zack timeline and the Cloud timeline, or the reality. I'm going to call them realities, actually. So there's the Zack reality and the Cloud reality. The Cloud reality is basically the remake that we're doing right here. And because they defeated these plot ghosts, things are not going to be the same. Because they destroyed the original timeline. Essentially, that's what I'm taking it as. They had destroyed the original timeline. Everything up until this point, after this remake, after episode 1, everything will be different. It even stated at the very end of episode 1, the unknown journey will continue. Which means that I don't know what's going to happen. And neither will anybody else that played the original Final Fantasy VII. So essentially, this is not a remake. This is a reimagining of Final Fantasy VII. Incredibly meta. Now, with that being said, there might be some spin-offs from here. Like Zack. Zack spin-off games. More than likely, we're going to see some Zack spin-off games. A lot of people have been speculating that we're going to be playing the second timeline in episode 2, which would suck, but I think they might make more games. And I'm like, dang, I can't believe they're actually doing that. And then I thought again, oh my god, Nomura. Holy crap. Are you guys ready for Dream Drop 7, Fantasy 7? You guys ready for Rechain of Final Chain of Memories 7? You guys ready for the spin-offs? I don't know if you guys are, but all aboard the Nomura train, basically. Nomura likes to get these very complicated story elements implemented in there, and he was able to infiltrate Final Fantasy VII, apparently. So yes, the remake will now 100% be different from the original. It's not a remake, it's a reimagining now. From this point on, it's a reimagining. Episode 2 will be completely different. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't. And then they might make spin-offs, games, animes, movies, whatever, with Zack as the main character and Cloud being his buddy, his sidekick or whatever. Who knows what'll happen then? So who knows? Maybe Genesis will be alive. Freaking, I don't know. I don't know, man. A lot of different things. So with that being the case, what does this mean? Oh, before I go into any further, Sephiroth. If you guys don't know, if you guys have played it, of course, Sephiroth being the person that showed up a lot earlier than normal. Normally, you were introduced to Sephiroth more in depth after Midgar. You got a glimpse of him and you got a mention of him during the Shinra arc where President Shinra gets stabbed by Sephiroth, but he showed up way earlier. I'm talking about the first bombing run, he showed up. And I started to realize more and more, and I started to discuss this more with my viewers, and we have come to the conclusion, this is basically another reality or another Sephiroth. This is Sephiroth interfering with this reality and changing things. And that's why we were able to see the plot ghosts. That's why the plot ghosts were going nuts. It's because Sephiroth was interfering. He showed up way earlier and started to give cloud glimpses of the original timeline. Same thing with the plot ghost. The plot ghost is the exact same thing. And Sephiroth was just basically messing things up. How he was able to do that and why he's able to do that, I have no clue. We don't know. It's undisclosed. Maybe we'll find out more later on, which is why I'm so worried about episode 2, because it can get even more convoluted than this. But Sephiroth right now is the reason why things are different. He started to change things. He basically wants to be a god. His original intentions, I'm pretty sure, are the same. He wants to absorb the live stream, just like the original. Wants to become a god and lead new Earth, new whatever. So we're thinking he infiltrated the live stream, and somehow with the live stream he was able to go back to another reality or another timeline or whatever, and kind of just mess things up from there. And that's what the final boss fight is, pretty much. It's going to be the plot ghost and Sephiroth. And at the very end, there's some super, super meta stuff that I even don't understand. But that's Nomura for you. That's Nomura. That's even though, and a lot of people are going to say, yeah, he's not the writer. Yes, he's not the only director. He's not this, he's not that. But anything involved with that man will always be somewhat convoluted. Say what you want, throw whatever you want at me, but these turn of events, or these sequence of events, are going to be it's different, very different from the original. And every time I see Nomura's name on one of the on the stuff, I just can't help but to just chuckle, just be like, oh man, he's gonna Kingdom Hearts 3 Final Fantasy, huh? So yeah. And okay, what are my thoughts now that I've went over that? What are my thoughts? I am excited but scared at the same time. I'm excited because this is all new stuff. You can, the same exact thing I said from the beginning, you can see these characters in a different alternate storyline. Let's see what plays out. You don't know what to expect. This reminds me a lot of comic book Walking Dead versus TV show Walking Dead. Two started out the same, but branched out to be super different. So I think it's going to be very similar. Now, things are going to change. We might not see Aerith dying. We might not see we might see other characters being brought out. We might, I don't know. I really don't know. We might see new things that happen. I really, like, when I start to think about this might happen, my brain starts to melt. And I start to think of the different possibilities that happen. And I'm just like, what? We might not see Yuffie. We might not see Sid. Who knows? I don't know. I have no clue. Their introductions might be completely different. Their introductions might be... Vincent, too. Who knows? Maybe Dirge of Cerberus is canon. maybe those events will play out for Dirge of Cerberus. I don't know. Maybe Advent Children will be, will be a thing again. I don't know. I really, my brain starts to just malfunction if I start to think about it too much. But I want to tell you guys that I am excited for what they're going to be doing, because it's brand new stuff. But I'm also scared because, of course, anytime they start to bring in convoluted timelines, especially when Nomura's is somewhat involved too, things can get bad. And I also feel bad for the people that just want to see the original timeline, 1997 timeline, being played out, but just in a remade fashion. I feel bad for those people. But we're probably going to be seeing something very, very, very different. And I'm excited. I can't wait for episode 2. And it could be something great, or it could just completely flop on its face. People are going to be pissed off, and this could all be for nothing. But overall, the package for Final Fantasy VII Remake was an amazing one. I had a fantastic time playing Final Fantasy VII Remake. I loved it. Every second of it. Plot twist and all. Characters and all. Gameplay and all. Environment. Immersion. Everything. I loved it. And I'm so glad that I was able to sit in front of the camera and talk about it with you guys. Like I said, this is a freaking long video, but I wanted to get everything across. I wanted to tell you guys about everything, my feelings, everything like that. Like I said, I'll be making a mega compilation, and if you guys want to see my full reactions to all this stuff, I'll be posting some links in the mega compilation. But if you guys want to see my playthrough now, I'll link that in the description down below. My Twitch, you can see it there. They're in like ginormous 12-hour parts, but you can fast forward or whatever. I know that the plot twist really blew my mind. I couldn't comprehend for a second. I had to sleep on it, and here I am right now. Anyways, guys, thank you all for stopping by. Thank you all for watching. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this Final Fantasy VII Remake review, impressions, thoughts, everything that I have to say about FF7 Remake. If I miss anything, then I'm going to regret it. But if not, I think I went over everything that I wanted to talk about. If I missed anything, let me know in the comment section down below. If you guys want to, of course, subscribe to the channel. I might do this with future games that impact me more. I know that a game, like maybe future Final Fantasies will be like this. Where I will play new ones or old ones, and if they affect me the same way the remake did, then sure. I highly doubt it, but sure. And maybe I'll do this recurring thing, I don't know. But I wanted to do this with remake because it really has impacted me in a way that I didn't expect it to. So, alright guys, thank you all for stopping by. Thank you all for hanging out with me in this very long video. Take care, everybody. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out, guys.